What's going on, guys? Chunky back here on my channel with E3 2019 wrapping up its conferences. I'm here to talk about my 5 favorite things across this weekend. I'm also sorry about the wind. If it's really windy, you can hear it. I'm sorry. I'll try and fix it in post, but let's move on nonetheless. Number 5, I want to talk about Deathloop. Now, Deathloop was a really interesting new IP from developers Arcane Leon. Pretty much Arcane Studios, the guys that made Dishonored, have split up into 2 separate studios, and this second studio is making Deathloop. Deathloop is pretty much a time-bending story about 2 characters that awaken on an island called the Black Reef, I think. And basically, the crux of the story is that every time either of these characters die, they re-wake where they originally woke up, similar to something like Groundhog Day or even The Edge of Tomorrow. Now, the difference is that one of these characters stands to break this time loop and the other character stands to preserve this time loop. But in order to get what they want, they need to basically kill each other over and over again to keep that from happening or to happen in the first place. Now, it's a really interesting story, and that's really what grabbed me anyway, because it wasn't really a gameplay trailer. However, we can expect some similar gameplay elements from the Dishonored series, maybe even a similar style. It was oozing in this sort of 70s pulpy action film style with a really cool 8-bit, or like Super 8, sorry, I should say, grainy style footage. And I liked it. I think the soundtrack was cool. I think it had a cool premise, and yeah, I'm looking forward to that one there. Number 4 is Watch Dogs Legion. Coming out of Ubisoft's conference, I was excited for Watch Dogs. I actually enjoyed the first 2 games. Number 1 is still extremely underrated, definitely overhyped and oversold way too early, but was a good game nonetheless. Number 2 really tried to shake things up yet again, and I can respect it for that, even though it had its flaws. And number 3 is doing exactly the same thing yet again. It's trying to shake things up, but I can also appreciate and respect it for that very reason. Now, the main crux of this game is that you don't really play as a main character. You're playing as any NPC in the world. You pretty much recruit them, and then you can play as them. They have their own origins, their own abilities, their own spin on the game. The trailer really gave us some cool characters to choose from. We started off walking through the gritty London streets as sort of like a brawler as such, really rough and tough guy that was getting involved, helping this guy in a fight, and then he died, and it was like permadeath. So characters die permanently in this game once. You're done with them. And then I went to this weird ex-assassin grandma that was like tearing it up. I thought it's a really interesting premise. It doesn't say much about the story itself. It's still a dead sec-oriented story. Seems to be a futuristic version of London, but it looks cool nonetheless, and I'm looking forward to playing that one. Now, number 3 was really a controversial one for a lot of people, including myself. It's the Avengers. It's Square Enix's, Crystal Dynamics, Marvel's Avengers game. It's just titled Marvel's Avengers. It is a different take. It's not really based on anything that came before it. I can respect both Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics for wanting to do their own thing with the characters and the franchise. It makes sense. However, I did have some problems with this game, so I'm going to start with those first and then go on to my positives. Now, the first weird problem that I have is I don't really have a problem with how the Avengers look. I expected them to look different. The only problem is because those actors from the MCU are so iconic, I think your brain just automatically has to relate the two. My problem with one of the characters was Thor. Now, he looks, costume-wise, he looks fine. That's the original Thor. That's the Thor that we all know. But the face, it's somewhat accurate. That's how Thor looks. He's got the blonde hair, the long hair, the beard. That's okay. But he looks like a default Nord. You know that weird dude that's in the carriage with you at the start of Skyrim and says, you've awakened. He looks like that. It looks like a default characterization. It looks like someone just had a random customization in Skyrim, pressed OK, and then brought that face over to Thor. It looks lifeless, it looks dull, it doesn't look textured or detailed. Half his face is covered in hair. It didn't look as convincing as I thought, although the costume was okay. Secondly, we didn't really get to see any gameplay. I'm having not more and more of an issue. I've sort of always had this issue of marketing gameplay trailers with 2 to 3 seconds of gameplay with no HUD. It's sort of really hard to tell what is gameplay and what is not. Sure, I can appreciate it. There goes the poster. Let's fix it up. Alright, so where was I? I can appreciate the gameplay trailers for at least showing something, like Watch Dogs. Doom Eternal was another honorable mention that had just a segment of gameplay. This here, it's broken up. You can't really tell what it is. It's more of a story trailer of sorts. And then the third problem that I had was the story itself. Now, obviously, the Avengers are taking part in some sort of Avengers Day, and then something happens, the Avengers got to go fix it up, and then it gets screwed over, and something happens, the city gets destroyed. 5 years later, the Avengers are trying to deal with the events of their defeat. Wait, haven't we seen this somewhere? There are so many things you could do with the Avengers that doesn't really seem like an original story to me anymore. But, I mean, look, I'm such a huge fan of the Marvel franchise, the MCU, the Avengers, everything. So Nolan North is voicing Iron Man, so that's a huge perk. It doesn't look incredibly dull. I mean, there's a few polished elements. Some of the characters do look really good, like Iron Man's costume, Nolan North's voice performance, Bruce Banner as the Hulk. It looks really cool. Some of the gameplay elements look really intuitive. It looks really detailed and in-depth. When we get to see the actual gameplay, I'm assuming that'll really fix and address some of those concerns. So until then, next year, May 2020, I'm hoping to see more gameplay. Now, number 2 was Star Wars Jedi: The Fallen Order. Now, this was almost going to be number 1 because we did get our best look yet at the gameplay and what to expect from the story and some supporting characters. The reason why is we got that huge 10-minute gameplay segment, but it really opened my eyes to exactly what this game is going to be. And the problem, I'm going to start with the problem first. We've seen this sort of game before. It's a hodgepodge, a mix-up of a lot of elements that we've seen in previous games. Maybe some of the combat from Dark Souls, maybe some of the traversal from Uncharted, maybe some of the parkour from Titanfall. Aptly, it's Respawn developing this game, so it makes sense they're going to throw in some of those Titanfall elements here and there. However, that isn't what is responsible for a bad game. Some of these repetitive or some of these overused elements in other games can be used effectively and in creative ways to create some sort of new experience, to create something that does feel fresh. Remember guys, there's not much about Uncharted that is original, and it's one of my favorite series and games to date. I am a huge Star Wars fan, so the story trailer that accompanied it was also really good. We had a deeper look at Saw Gerrera and why he is as important as he is to the rebellion. Overall, the main character, I think his name's Cal, he looks more powerful than what we saw. However, I'm really looking forward to this. It looks incredibly polished. The lightsaber gameplay was impressive, to say the least. But this is probably one of the videos that I'm going to elaborate on and do a separate gameplay review video of sorts. So stay tuned for that one. And number 1 was Cyberpunk 2077. Now, if you've already watched E3, I probably don't need to explain why this was as awesome as it was. I was really impressed. A lot of people aren't as impressed because it was a cinematic trailer. However, I'm more accepting of a cinematic trailer for 2 reasons. Number 1, it was polished. Number 2, it developed more of the main character and a little bit more of why the story, or what direction the story is going to take. We'd seen gameplay before. Keanu Reeves was at the end of this cinematic trailer in the game. He looks awesome. He looks incredibly detailed. You can tell it's Keanu Reeves. And then secondly, they actually brought him out onto the stage. The guy who yelled at Keanu, "You're breathtaking," actually got a collector's edition of the game. Look it up. Keanu, he's just such a down-to-earth kind of guy, and just bringing him onto the conference stage really is probably what fans wanted to see, and everyone went crazy. And Keanu was obviously invested in something like this, so all respect, props to Keanu for appearing. On top of that, he actually announced the release date, but that's why it was my favorite. I think that in terms of Microsoft conference, that was their killer race. That was what they were hoping that would get the most talk and the most coverage. Thank you for watching my E3 coverage and what I thought of my 5 favorite things. You guys have been amazing. Please like the video down below. Please comment if you have anything to say about E3, and subscribe and click that bell button down below if you want to stay updated with all my future content. I've been Chunky. Thanks for stopping by my world, and I'll see you soon. Take care.